G maneuvers in Gundam Evolution are extremely important abilities. Not only are they the capstone to your mobile suit, but good usage of them will oftentimes determine who wins a match of Gundam Evolution. So, I'm going to run through and talk about what you need to know about how to use them, and we're going to cover all of that information. So, getting right into it, we're going to talk about the type of ultimates that there are, how you can use them essentially, and then how that defines and helps you understand what you should do with yours. So, starting off, there are three fundamental ways that you can use your G maneuver. There is something called a pressure ultimate, a finishing ultimate, and then a fight turning ultimate. So, starting off with pressure ultimates that are often also called engagement ultimates. An engagement ultimate is a kind of pressure ultimate. It's just the one that you use at the very beginning of a fight, right? So in general, these pressure ultimates usually are at the beginning of the fights. They don't aim to mainly secure kills, but they're aiming to soften up the enemy, lower their HP, lower their cooldowns, get them out of important spots. Basically, prepare them for your team to win the fight with other abilities. Yeah, sometimes you can get good kills with them, but that's usually not what the core function of them. You're not planning to win the fight off of using it. You're planning to set your team up to win the fight by using them. So, these ults essentially are the ones that do well into the enemy, regardless of what they have available for them. So, it doesn't, for something, for example, like Sazabi's ultimate is one of these pressure ultimates, and if you use it at the beginning of a fight when you're engaging on the enemy, the fact that they have high HP and cooldowns available isn't going to stop your ultimate from walking in and pressuring them and doing a lot of damage to them, because it's not like you can kill them or anything. Versus something like Exia's ultimate, where if you use that ultimate into the team when they have all their cooldowns and all their HP, you're going to die. So that's why it's not. That's not why it's not one of those. That's why it's a finishing ultimate. So exactly like I just said, this would be using something like a Sazabi ultimate to push into the enemy with it, soften them up, lower their HP. Maybe to get a kill, but basically you're just looking to make it so they don't have any cooldowns left. And then you can go and finish them off. That would be finished off by a finishing ult. So these ults are the ones that are really bad when, or not always really, but they're bad if you use them just, right at the beginning. But they're really, really good when the enemy can't defend themselves very well. Exia's ultimate and Barbatos's ultimate is a very good example of this, because if you just press the button and just go in, you're going to get poked out, you're going to be low HP, you're going to die. But if you do it in the middle of the fight when the enemy's not ready, they won't have the cooldowns to stop you, they won't have the stun abilities, they won't have the HP, then you'll be able to swipe through and kill them each with one shot. So, there's two forms of these finishing ultimates. There are planned and unplanned ones, which, also happens in other situations, but I guess everything anyway, whatever. So, planned would essentially be like the continuation of the story I was talking about, where you pressure them with Sazabi's ultimate, and then your plan before the fight is you guys say, hey, I'm going to use my Sazabi ultimate, and I'm going to pressure the enemy and push into them. And then when the fights, when they're low in the middle of the fight, Pale Rider, I want you to use your ultimate on the flank, right? And so you use your Sazabi ult, and then the Pale Rider comes on the flank, and the enemy's all low, they can't stop you, and then he just one-shots all of the team, right? That's a finishing ultimate. So, and that is a finishing planned ultimate. An unplanned one would be something you seize an opportunity, essentially. So your Barbatos is like you're playing the fights kind of, you're trading characters, like maybe it's 5-5, things are like people are low, they're trying to survive, whatever. And then your Barbatos is like, yo, I can kill everyone in the enemy team if I ult right now. And so he ults and kills everyone in the enemy team, right? Like that's how that goes. That's unplanned finishing ultimate. Both of these options are necessary and important, but the planned ones are really powerful just because it gives your team something to play around. And so they don't just walk in like doing their own things, right? Also, if you plan them, you can decide how many to use. So, and then there's the last one type is called a fight turning ultimate. And this is the hardest ult type to use effectively. And it's essentially just using an ult to try and win a fight that you were losing. So maybe something like you're 3 down versus the enemy team, and you have it's 3-6, right? With how many people are alive. And then your melee Zaku's like, yeah, I can take these guys. And then tries to pop the ult to win it, right? It's usually not very good to do just because the margins are so fine that if you're not at the very top of the level, you oftentimes are going to have difficulty getting support from your team when you do that. Because if it's 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 and you're like keep going, I'm going to ult, right? And so you ult and you start killing people, and then your teammates understand that they want to keep playing with you during that time period, and not just reset, then you're going to win. But at a low rank, you're going to pop the ult, get 2-3 kills, but then your team's going to have deserted you, because they just don't expect it. And because it is a very high level skill, right? So in high ranks, you can make it happen, but even then it's hard, right? And in low ranks, you're just going to get flamed for throwing. And oftentimes these ults just won't work in general. So you really probably shouldn't be trying to do that often. So, now to the actionable stuff. How do you know what kind of ult your mobile suit has? So every unit's G maneuver can be used as a pressure or a finishing ult, but some are better than others at each type, right? So the pressure ultimates are GM's ultimate. It can be used as finishing, but it's really good at pressuring because you toss it into an enemy, throw it into a room when they're not ready, early fight, throw it behind them, and it pressures them and it deals a lot of damage, and they have to panic and run away and deal with it. Dom Trooper's ult is really good for that because it can just completely immediately turn the game into a mid fight. You press that ultimate, you start running into them, slapping them around. They can't stop you, they can't stun you, they're having a hard time dealing damage to you, and you're just fragging out. GM Sniper gives your full team a lot of knowledge and can force the enemy into bad positions because they have to hide from your GM Sniper, and can help your team get a lot of information so you can walk into them and finish them. It can be very, very powerful. Metis ult is probably the best engagement ultimate, this best pressure ultimate, because if you toss it onto a Sazabi, that's immediately this massive chunk of giant red thing that the enemy has to deal with, right? And that's going to take a lot of resources. That's going to take a bunch of cooldowns. The enemy's going to be low HP. Yeah. So, finishing ultimates now. Barbatos's ultimate is very much so a finishing ultimate. It's probably one of the quintessential finishing ultimates, right? If you use it when the enemy is all looking at you, you're not going to get anything out of it. If you use it when the enemy has some resources down, you can kill the whole team. And particularly because you have to expose yourself so much. That's what you're going to see from a lot of these things that work as both a pressuring ult and a finishing ultimate, is that they can be used, they deal a lot of damage, but you don't have to put yourself in a dangerous position. But with Barbatos's ultimate, and the rest of them too, you kind of have to do that, right? Unicorn Gundam's ult is also good for finishing, though it's actually a both, so we'll get onto that in a second. Melee Zaku's ultimate is not going to get a lot of value if you just use it, right? They'll just back away from you, they'll dash away from you, and they'll shoot you in the head and you'll die. But if the whole enemy team is surrounding you because you've gone so deep, and then you press that ultimate, you're going to get a lot of value, right? So it's a lot about positioning and how close you are now to the enemies. Like with Barbatos, for example, if you want to try and use that ultimate, you have to get close to get good value out of it. So if you just walk in and press your jump button and then just jump into the enemy, they're going to see some loser just jumping in with his mace, right? And then you just shoot him before he gets there. Maybe he pops his ult with 200 HP and dies. But if he's in the middle of the team already with 800 HP, because he's only taking a little bit of damage, then he's going to frag out, right? So that is why you do that like that. Exia's is the same as Barbatos, exactly the same. RX-78 Gundams, you don't want to use it as much for a pressure ult. You can if it's a really organized thing, but usually it's just better to toss it into the enemy or behind the enemy when they're low, and when they're low and they can't really look at it and shoot it. But if you throw it really early in the fight as a pressure ultimate, they're just going to look at the ground and shoot it, right? Because it can dies easily. Guntank's ultimate is one that doesn't require you to make yourself vulnerable. However, you do have to, if you use it early, the enemy's just going to walk away from it and shoot it in the face. And then you're not going to get any value out of it. And then you're going to be like, wow, I'm playing Guntank and I worked so hard to get this ultimate and I don't get anything out of it. I'm sad. So don't do that, right? And even if you do hunt down and kill a single player, they can be rezzed because you aren't there to stop the res. So ones that are both, though, are Unicorn Gundams. Unicorn Gundams can be used as an initiation ult if you wait a little bit, right? You have to wait until they can't just run away from you. Although, fun fact, this ultimate can go through walls if you shoot on the edge of a corner. If the core of the bullet goes past the corner, it'll continue damaging through corners and stuff like that. So that's really cool. Although it decreases in damage with how far they are away from it. And then Pale Rider's ultimate is like that. If you use it too early, then they can walk away from you. But if you use it to just bolster the standard beginning I shoot you, you shoot me phase, then you're gonna get a lot of value out of that. And Mahiro is the same as Pale Rider. It can be used to finish off weak enemies with just like yeeting grenades into groups, or it can be used to like stop an enemy. Like if enemies start pushing into you through a choke point, you're like, well, now it's the time to pop my ult, and you start spamming them at the choke, right? There are a couple more ultimates that are in a fourth category, and these are what I would call just situational ultimates, which are Ashimar's punch ability, Zaku's slash ability, Marasai's ultimate, and Turn A Gundam's ultimate. And these are just because you can't, they're not good as initiation ults, but they're also not good as finishing ults because they're not reliable enough. Like they don't do enough. Ashimar and Zaku's are solo ultimates. Marasai's ults can be like, get a lot of value or none, really. And Turn A Gundam's is just weird and wonky. So it's all situational. So if something jumps on you in Ashimar, punch him in the face. If an enemy is, like if you run into a Sazabi as Zaku, slash through him and finish him off. If there's a group of enemies, Marasai, just shoot your attack, right? But you can't plan to like finish with Marasai, because if you do, and you're like, all right guys, we're gonna weaken them up with this, and then we're gonna go finish them off with Marasai's ultimate. Well, I hope that they, you know, are grouped up, right? Because if they're not, well then that goes that. So yeah, moving on from this though, for final advice on how to use these ultimates, start with using your ultimates like I just defined them. Yes, like I said, you could do more with them, and the very, very high level players who practice the abilities a lot will do them differently. But when you are getting consistent value with these ultimates, so you're consistently using Sazabi's ultimate well to pressure enemies, you're consistently getting good value out of using Metis' ult as an engagement ultimate. Same thing with Dom Trooper. You can expand them to situational use and expand them to like finish with or just in situational in general. But that takes time, it takes learning, right? So you don't want to like try and jump onto that right away. The way that like, so you can, like I said, you can do some of these things for sure. Like with Sazabi's ultimate, you can use it to sustain longer mid fight. Like I remember a very distinct time, I talk about this sometimes, where my team was kind of losing and I was pressuring the enemy really hard and I'd lost my shield. I'd like secured a kill and lost my shield, and then I ulted, and my ult just sustained my whole pressure there and gave my team enough space to survive and win the fight. It was a really, really great feeling, but you can use them like that, right? However, for situational ultimates in particular, but also just all the ultimates, don't be afraid to experiment with them. Like, you know, after you've learned the basics, right? For situational ultimates, you have to just experiment with them. For the other ones, just use them like I said. However, just keep in mind in general that ulting before the enemy ults will usually win the games for you. People, if you go first when you're playing against an enemy, they then have to survive your ultimates. So say you and your team are like, all right, let's put our Metis boost onto our Barbatos and let him go ult and go crazy. Do it before the enemy does stuff, because then they have to survive that whole set of ultimates. And then if they like pass that test, then they can try and threaten you. So it usually is better, not always, but usually. And you know, good rule of thumbs of generalizing things will make you climb in these sort of games. Like most definitely will make you climb in these games. So just another set of general rules though. Until you have like a really good grasp of how your abilities work, don't ult when your team is losing. Like I talked about earlier with the finishing ult, or sorry, the fight turning ult, it usually won't work. So just don't do it really. Just honestly, just don't do it. Right? Just don't do it until you have a really good grasp. Ult when your team is in neutral. So when they have the same amount of people alive as you, that's a perfect time to ult. Don't hesitate. Why are you waiting? Like, yeah, like I talked about, yes, you use finishing ults, but you can speed up your finishing ult, right? You can try and get into a situation and try and pressure the enemy first, that then lets you use it. So use your finishing ults as soon as you can. Within the value window when it's a good time to use it. And then don't ult if the enemy is down 2 people on you. If they're down only 1 and they have a lot of ultimates, well then they can still probably win. So it's okay for you to use your ultimate. If they're down by 2 though, they're very unlikely going to win. Usually, especially in lower ranks when people haven't like min-maxed everything, when they're down 2 people, it's like a fight loss in their mind. Like they're just like, oh, it's over, so you don't need to waste your ultimate. ultimates are really, really, really important. So don't use them. Something that's also really, really good and will help you climb, it's a little bit more of an advanced technique, but is to fight plan. So plan ahead what you want to use. And a really good rule of thumb also is to use 2 ultimates per fight. If you win every single fight with 2 ultimates, like you use 2 ults win, use 2 ults win, use 2 ults win, you will get like 4 free fight wins off of that until the enemy finally has more ultimates to you. And they'll have like 6 and they'll use all of them and then you lose, right? And this is like in, you know, hypothetical type stuff. But yeah. Use 2, guys. Use 2 ultimates, use them before the enemy does, and have a general idea for when you want to use them is really important. If, for example, you have to have some self-restraint though. If your team is like, all right, we're going to use our Sosby's ultimate to get space on the enemy, we're going to pressure them with whatever, and then we're going to have our Barbatos finish them off in the middle of the fight, and you're playing Pale Rider, and that all happens, and you're sitting there and you're like, dang, I could kill everyone right here. Or I think I could. And so you ult, but then your Barbatos ults at the same time, and either of you would have won it with just their ultimate. Well, now you've wasted yours for the next fight. And so if you just waited, you wouldn't have done that. So follow the plan, and you'll probably be good. Looking for some more Gundam Evolution content? Then make sure to check out these 14 mobile suit guides I did. In them, I go over the abilities of the characters, the strengths and weaknesses, when to play them, and how to play them. I go really in depth, and I think the videos are really good, so you guys should go check them out. Thank you.